All right. All right, here we go. I know I've been slacking on a lot of my streams, so I'm going to try to get back to the habit here with some RP 101. So, hello everyone. Welcome to our typical role-playing discussion, where my co-host and I like to chat about role-playing in all its forms, and give our thoughts on some things that we like, and other things that sometimes, make us scratch our heads. So let's get right to it. Alright. In my opinion, persuasion and manipulation checks are for people who can't role play out being persuasive or manipulative. I have a tendency, as a GM and storyteller, to accept clever dialogue and conversation angles as those roles. So if the player in question brings up a good point, an NPC might be swayed by, it's no longer a persuasion check, it's merely the character being persuasive. So if the player in question has nothing to say, however, and just wants to make the persuasion roll, that's fine. It's just that you're subject to the outcome of the dice. When a person actually role plays and gives my NPCs reason to pause, I consider that the talent of the role player, so I will not require them to make the persuasion check. They, in my eyes, have already done it by offering me something to think about. So, that's just one of the ways that I like to reward role players for, actually role playing, because it's really annoying to be really persuasive and then have to make a roll anyway, and it's like, and I've had GMs, tell me, they're like, well, technically that should have worked, because your argument was valid, but because you failed your roll, we have to say that you failed the scenario. And I'm like, well, that's kind of crappy, It's kind of crappy that I just have to be subject to the roll when in your opinion, I've made a good case. So I was like, well, I'm gonna do that in my own games, because if someone gives me a reason to pause. Hey there, welcome you guys. If someone gives me a reason to pause, that should be enough of a reason for me to make them pass the check. I shouldn't have to make them roll. However, if they don't have an argument, they don't know what to say, but they still want to try and be persuasive or manipulative, then yeah, absolutely, make the roll. Make the roll, because, that's likely going to be the only way you're going to get it done anyway. So just beef up those stats. Beef up those stats and get yourself some skills that help you out in that area. That's what I would do. Anyway, that's just a random thought. Okay, so I keep hearing things about this. Exploring villainesque mindsets and characters does not make a person a villain. Just FYI. Is this why people are so afraid to portray evil characters and villains? Because, dude, evil characters, they're my favorite. Because you get to be kind of an asshole, and there are literally zero real-life consequences. You can explore psychotic psyches, embrace the want to destroy, steal, and lie, and you can do it all because it's a game. And yes, negative consequences will occur in-game, but it's just a character, Go ahead and let it get imprisoned, or worse, just make another one. Not everyone needs to be a knight in shining armor, and honestly, not everyone should want to be one, Us survivalists don't really care about any of that, any of the right and wrong stuff. We care about whether or not we'll be able to live to actually eat something tomorrow. That's what we're concerned about. That's it. We'll sacrifice others, we'll flee in the dead of the night, we'll turn tail and run at the first sight of something we think is beyond our scope. We don't care. And guess what? That might seem evil to some folks, but that's actually what you'd call neutral. So a focus on oneself and little else. Selfish, yeah, maybe, but guess what? We tend to survive, So you can be a survivor, you can be a dominator, or you can be a saint, It's up to you, but it's a role play, So try and have a little fun. Try and play something you don't normally play. Experience the freedom of being in a fictional environment. That's like the best thing I can suggest to people. And I agree, Phantom. I don't want to be a knight in shining armor either. I don't, I will ditch the rest of the party if I feel like I'm not being listened to or we're doing very stupid things. I'll ditch them. I don't care. I'll join the villain's side, I have no problems with that sort of motivation. I don't know why other people have such a hard time with it. It's like, this is a game, some of us have to be villains, otherwise it's gonna be really boring. I don't know. People can run their games however they want. It's just, I think there should be some level of conflict. Alright. I think we've mentioned this before. Unless otherwise stated, a roleplay is not like an old video game or action movie. The monsters are not mindless villains, and the villains are not all egotistical narcissists that make foolish mistakes. In the games I run, my players often have the very difficult job of deciphering who and what is worth aiding. Just because someone is getting beaten in a town square, for instance, doesn't mean you intervening on their behalf will manifest as quote-unquote the right thing to do. It might seem that way, but let's take a step back and watch the scene play out just a little bit. Listen to things the crowd says. The characters might start to hear things that make it clear this person is being run out of town for a legitimate reason, and they might not. In either case, one quick look at a situation is never enough to size it up fully, and by rushing in and playing hero, you might very well be marking yourself as a strange and even dangerous outsider. Not a good place to be in some of those distant rural communities where punishments are doled out by mob justice. Now, if what you're looking for is the sort of game and plot where the characters are always good, they know what they're doing is good, and they never once have to question their actions or intentions, then you need to be clear about that when seeking a game and declare that to your potential GM. Because people like me will tell you immediately, then this game is not for you. I strive to make my players think, that's sort of my goal. I thought that was the point of all storytelling, to convey a moral through fiction form. Every folktale has a moral, every myth has a message. So to me, every roleplay should have some form of lesson. That's really a personal opinion, but, it's my opinion all the same. Like I said, people can run whatever kind of games they want, but they have to be clear. You have to be clear about what you're looking for, and then the GMs have to be clear about what their game is and what it will possess. I will always be super honest with my potential players. I'm never going to lie to you about what's going to be in the game, because that would be dumb. No relationship founded on deceit, ever ends well, so there's no point for me to lie to you. No, I'm going to declare to you exactly what's going on, and I hope that my players declare to me exactly what they want, which a lot of cases they don't. So, it gets a little frustrating. But it is what it is. Let's see, what else have I got to... on that topic, a little bit more on that topic, be sure to ask a potential GM what the pacing of the game is. And I don't just mean post frequency, I also mean the actual story pacing, how quickly the threads move from one location to another, how quickly the characters reach dilemmas to solve. While I do enjoy letting my players socialize amongst themselves and the NPCs, I also want to make sure and keep the story moving, so usually I give the players enough time to get lulled into a false sense of security, and then I just ruin everything by throwing some crazy dilemma at that. It could be the town is under siege, could be that a riot has broken out, could even be that portals are opening up and depositing demons right into the town and buildings. But no matter what, I will always have a pacing to my games that barely gives the characters time to socialize, because, in my opinion, if a dilemma doesn't slap in to make the situation complicated and quickly, we'd be doing little else than having what are likely pretty boring conversations. Now, if you like that kind of stuff, then yes, you want a slower pacing, which is just as important to clarify, because if you jump into a fast-paced dystopian game where characters are getting offed in scene one, it likely will be a little too much for you. Every game is different, which means not every game will be for every player. Don't be afraid to ask the GM questions and see if the game's for you, because I really hate it when players feel obligated to stay in a game merely because they misinterpreted its theme and pacing, as if them forcing themselves to be a part of the story, be part of a story they hate, somehow makes the rest of us not notice and, feel uncomfortable. Just be honest, about your wants and expectations. That will make it so much easier for you to find the type of game you're actually looking for. And remember to be polite. Making demands from a potential GM will only make them not want to run a game for you. It's literally that simple. Be kind and courteous, and you'll likely get plenty of it in return. Act selfish and obnoxious, and the only thing you'll likely get is a swift kick and block. So, keep that stuff in mind. I agree, Phantom. I usually make humans as the villains in my game because, I don't know, I just feel that's accurate. It's very seldom. And because think about it, even if you have a purely human story, then your villains are still going to be humans. So, one way or another. Alright. So as per usual, There's a lot of term and definition confusion going on, and people love to take words and give them their own meaning. And then when new players come to their table and use these words for their original meaning, the flurry of confusion commences. So apparently, people seem to think there's a difference between game masters and storytellers. Now, in my day, the only difference between these two terms indicated the games you played. DMs and GMs were generally for D&D and your average board game, while storyteller, ST, was used for those who ran World of Darkness games and now Chronicles of Darkness. So, since everyone is taking words and redefining them, here's my redefinition for you. To me, a game master or a dungeon master is someone who requires modules and guides to run their game. A storyteller, in comparison, are those more able to improvise and come up with their own content. A GM runs a game, there are likely rules and dice. A storyteller narrates a story, and if there are dice, but there are a lot of cases where they just aren't necessary to a storyteller. So, yeah, in my mind, this makes the most sense. If you want to run games with modules and predetermined outcomes with no room for improvisation, you're a GM or DM. If you want to run games where improv is the main driving force, you're a storyteller. That's it. There you go. Now I can be one of those people who pretends their terminology is correct and everyone else's is nonsense. Can you sense my sarcasm? I certainly hope so. Just makes me laugh. People want to redefine so many things. I can do that too. I can play the game. Alright, let's see. This is something I've only recently become aware of as a widespread problem, but it does indeed seem to be a widespread problem. And we may have even talked about this before, but it just seems to keep coming up, and we keep hearing stories that are just crazy. And it's, taking the things people say far too seriously, and this goes for out of character as well as in character. We're playing a game, people. We're playing fictional characters. Nothing anyone says at any point in time should be misconstrued as some sort of personal attack. I've seen all sorts of players get angry at each other, Sometimes it's, something silly, like, what they eat. Other times it's stuff like people accusing other people of being bigots because of the character they play, And, I've seen people even just lose it on GMs when they encounter even NPCs who have negative outlooks. And that's not even counting all the violent explosions people have when characters die. And those are the main ones, really. I honestly rarely hear about any of the other kinds. It's always an argument over who's eating what and how that's against someone's stupid druidic religion or something, and someone being angry someone's character has negative traits they wrote into them on purpose so they'd have room to grow, and then people being angry someone died, and how it's someone else in the party who's responsible for it. Who cares? Leave the party then. If it bothers you that much, find a new group where everyone agrees with you. Same with bigoted characters and NPCs. They might be providing an antagonistic angle to produce struggle and conflict within the party because they enjoy role-playing such conflict. So you guys need to stop arguing and stop assuming each word is a personal attack, because it rarely, if ever, is. Play a game, have fun, and realize you're in a fictional environment where people might want to play characters very different from themselves. We don't all want to be pacifistic heroes. Some of us actually want to be villains. Again, touching on that subject again. So, food for thought, I guess. Just remember, we're not all here to be perfect, shining paladins. Some of us want to be thieves and killers, and sometimes we want to do it so discreetly that everyone in the party thinks we're cool, and then later on they find out we're not so cool. Oh my god, is it? Yeah, no, I forgot. That's a new one that boggles my mind. People getting angry. Why is your character hitting on their character and not my character or my NPC? That to me is just a new phenomenon I just can't even fathom. Because for people to even be angry about that means they're forming literal attachments to these characters, like unhealthy ones, like they want that your character should be attracted to my character. What? Holy shit, are you for real? Like, I don't get it. It's crazy to me. It's crazy to me. I hope people realize it's crazy. I don't know. I hope these people are young, you know, but I know sometimes they're not. so I don't know, man. That happens too, where people roleplay a character from some denomination, and because someone at the table is from that denomination, they either feel insulted or hurt or like they're being made fun of, and it's like, again, no one's making fun of you. It's someone's character. Anyone who watches anime would know that there are so many comedic homosexual characters out there, so many ways that you can just draw from that, and it's not that you're trying to be offensive, it's that you're just drawing from this media that you're used to dealing with. I see it all the time. Like, there are no serious gay characters in anime, not really. They're all a joke, and if they're not a joke, then there's some psychopath who like has some weird sick fetish, or that is a villain and you're not supposed to like them. It's almost like in some cases they almost demonize it, but to demonize someone who's just drawing from that media, I don't know. It's, that would have to be something that at character creation you would say you're uncomfortable with. Because if you let them play that character, you usually sit down and get to know everyone's character before you start playing, so you could easily tell if that was going to be a problem or not. So to actually be in the session and actually have taken that step. So again, I like to remind people that if you're uncomfortable with something, you can leave the game, you can leave the group. You are not obligated to stay. I leave groups all the time. I get in, I sometimes I have just enough time to like put together a character concept, or if I have to put together more than 2 character concepts, I'm done. I'm over it because that just to me indicates the person doesn't know the setting well enough, that they can't deal with all of the details I've dredged from the very distant lore of the setting. It's usually World of Darkness, because I'm very familiar with World of Darkness. So I can dredge up lore that people are just generally have no knowledge of, and I could link them to it, but I just think they don't want to learn. So it's just easier for me to leave the game and find a storyteller who's more willing or knows more about the topic I'm trying to address, in my character's background. But, it is what it is. There's not a whole lot we can do. Now, for today, those are all my topics for today, but we did put together a list, of 6 things. Me and Phantom put together a list of tips on how to maintain a tabletop or text RPG of any kind, and also a bit of sanity. Because we see people make a lot of mistakes, and we see people make a lot of the same mistakes, and then we see people ask questions, and they'll get a multitude of answers, but because they get a multitude of answers, they don't really know what advice to follow. So I like to just be really simple and as straightforward as possible when it comes to, ways to make my game successful. And the number one way that I make a game successful is I stay active. I stay active and in good communication with my players, even if they refuse to do so in return, because I can always kick out an inactive player, but the game can certainly not survive if I go silent for any length of time. And that goes for any GM, any storyteller. If you go silent for any length of time, if you lose contact with your players, it doesn't even matter if it's just a day or 2. If they can't get in touch with you, their interest might wane. They might have other groups that they're checking out, and as I said, no one has any obligation to stay. So if it looks like you're going to be inactive, they're going to leave. That's just the nature of the beast. So the best thing you can do when you're running a game is stay active in your game, stay in good communication with everyone, make sure to ask them questions, when they go silent, because players forget. Players are very, very forgetful. They're a forgetful animal. You have to constantly remind them. They're like school children. You have to remind them, ask them if they're ready for the session, if they're going to be ready for the session the day before. That's what I like to do. I like to ask the day before and be like, hey, are everyone going to be good for tomorrow? Because then that gives me a whole day to get responses, because some people do like to respond a half an hour before session time. Yeah, I'm ready for the session today. I'm like, that's great. I am ready. It's just, it would have been really cool to get that confirmation earlier. Because sometimes I get offers to go do other things. So I shoot these offers down thinking I have a session that day. And when someone hits me up a half an hour before session time, like, oh yeah, by the way, I can't make it. It's like, all right, well, I could have went somewhere 2 hours ago, but now it's too late, so I guess I just should live with that. You know, so just stay in good communication. That's why I urge players to stay in good communication too. They just do it for everyone's sanity. Just stay in good communication. GMs and players both, but GMs especially. It's just the burden is on us. It really is. You have to go out of your way sometimes to get these players to stay active, get their characters done, show up to sessions, you know, and if someone, you know, doesn't make the session enough times, I just boot them. You know, if I have to remind you enough times, I only remind somebody so many times. And then finally it's like, I'm not your mom. You know, I am not your mom. I'm not your mom, I'm not your dad, I'm not your grandma, I'm not your wet nurse, I ain't nothing. Okay, I'm not even your sibling. All right, I'm not even someone who likes you. I'm just a random on the internet and you're playing in my game. You know, I don't even know you that well. So, you know, just keep that in mind. All right, number 2. Having players party up might make less work, but you have to make sure those players are willing to be active and interact with each other. No one likes being snubbed and ignored at a table, and no one should have to endure it either. So, you know, if you have certain players that are not willing to interact with other players, that's a problem. All right, that's a problem, and if I see that enough times from one player, if I see that one player is willing to interact and another player isn't, and I see that enough times, you know, 3 strikes you're out. You know, sometimes it can just be 2, though. I tend to operate on a 2-strike system. If I see the same thing happen twice, I might pull you aside, give you that 3rd chance, you know, if you acknowledge that, you know, you're literally snubbing someone in the game, you're not acknowledging them, you're not acknowledging their character, you're not acknowledging anything that they say, you know, you're basically pretending they don't exist. You know, you can't do that. That's not really something you can do, and it just creates bad camaraderie at the table. So, you know, I don't keep those people in my game. If you're not willing to interact with the other players in the game, I don't know why you're in a group, you know. So as a GM, I just remove those people because it makes it harder to put together a functional group. You know, that's just been my experience on the matter. All right, number 3. Be polite and professional, even in the face of ire and adversity. Look, I know it gets tiring, but if you want people to feel comfortable in your games, you probably shouldn't go insulting people openly or just overall act like an asshat. I'm not saying take abuse and harassment, but I am saying be professional in how you contend with it. People will be drawn to that and respect it. You need to stay level-headed no matter what other people say. It's shitty. It's not fun. It's a lot of responsibility. It's why being a GM or a storyteller is hard. Okay? You know, you can't just be out here acting like an asshole. If you act like an asshole, then you're likely not going to have anyone in your games. And if you're acting like an asshole and nobody wants to be in your games, then I guarantee you're the type of person that then goes and complains about it. Why don't any players want to play in my game? I run such awesome games and yet no one wants to be in them. This is so stupid. You know, there's a ton of people like that. Don't be one of those people. Remember that you need to be polite and professional in order to really draw people to your table. It's fine to have wit. It's fine to have a personality, but you can't just be openly insulting and abusive as a GM. You just can't. It's unprofessional. I don't know why anyone would want to be unprofessional. I don't know. That's just me. Okay, number 4. Make sure to separate your OOC channels from your IC channels, your out of character from in character, when online. At a table, usually we just call a timeout and I pull the player that wants to speak with me privately aside, or we use text messages. Makes it pretty easy. In my games, there are always things about the characters that other players and characters wouldn't be aware of. I take all of that very seriously. I see those as major plot reveals down the line. So why would I want to ruin a plot reveal? You know, totally part of it. You know, I know I play characters a lot of the times that have secret things in their plots, and I work directly with the GM or storyteller to keep those things secret as long as possible. And then it's a major plot reveal when they find out that, "Oh, your character's a killer? Oh yeah, I bet you thought he was handsome and charming, didn't you?" You know, stuff like that. So, you know, just be sure to keep that stuff separate, because, and online it's so much easier, you know, you can directly DM those people, so you can have a dialogue that's separate from everything else. Yeah, makes it that much easier. What can I say? Alright, number 5, use whatever tools make you feel comfortable as a GM or storyteller. Don't jump through hoops for your players when you're not being paid, and never jump through flaming hoops even for cash. No abuse is worth any amount of money. This game is your game, so you need to run it how you like, run it the way that makes it easy for you. Don't feel pressured to run certain games or systems or use tools that you're unfamiliar with just because a player or two demand it. They don't have a right to. No one does. No one has a right to demand anything from you. If you want to use a particular tool to make the game easier, use that tool. Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter what other people say. There are going to be other people who like that tool. There always is. There's always a following for whatever tool exists. So it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if it's a map maker. It doesn't matter if it's a 3D modeler. Whatever. People love tools. Alright, and number 6, as per usual, focus on having fun. Alright, stressing over whether or not you're doing a good enough job, whether your players are having fun, whether you're being too extreme with your plot angles, any and all of that is a waste of time that could be better spent focusing on just having fun. If you're not doing a good enough job, you'll lose players. If your players keep showing up, they're obviously having fun. If you're worried about extreme plot angles and your player sensibilities, clear it in OOC first. It's literally that simple. If people lie and force themselves to partake in a roleplay they're uncomfortable in, that's on them, not you. Stop stressing. Remember, this is all a game and that no one is actually getting hurt, and also remember that stories come in all shades from happy-go-lucky to brutal and war-infested. Go nuts. You know? Run the game you want to run. Have fun running the game. Be clear about it with your players. You know, that's all you can do, that's the best you can do, and even if you're getting paid, just don't take abuse and don't keep, like I said, jumping through flaming hoops. There's just no point. You know? Absolutely no point. So, you know, well, that's pretty much our discussion today. I covered a lot of stuff. I had a lot of stuff that we put together over the course of the week, or however long it's been. I don't know. I lose track of time. But thanks for showing up, you guys. Thanks for taking part. As always, I love having everyone's thoughts. And hopefully we'll be back next week with some more discussions. So everyone be safe out there.